guys, this is Dan Seifert from mobileburn.com, and today I'm taking a quick look at the Motorola ATRIX 2 smartphone for AT&T. The ATRIX 2 is the successor to the Motorola ATRIX that was released earlier this year, which was Motorola and AT&T's first dual-core smartphone to hit the market. And it offers a few upgrades over the previous model and refines quite a few things on it. So let's take a quick look. For starters, we've got a 4.3-inch LCD screen. This is a QHD resolution. And unlike the QHD resolution screens that we've seen from previous Motorola models, this particular one does not use a pentile layout. So it's got 540 by 960 pixels of resolution, but it's very crisp and very sharp, unlike what we saw on the Droid Bionic, where you could actually see each individual pixel because of the pentile layout. The ATRIX 2 is very crisp and clear and doesn't have that issue. Below the screen, we've got capacitive keys for menu, home, back, and search. And then up above, we've got an earpiece and a VGA front-facing camera. If we look at the side of the phone, it's about 10.5 millimeters thick. And then we've got two ports here on the left-hand side. We've got the micro USB port and the micro HDMI port. And these work together to allow the ATRIX to be used with various lap dock accessories from Motorola. So you can adapt it into a laptop dock or connect it to your TV through an HD dock. Looking at the top of the phone, we've got a power sleep unlock key and a 3.5mm headphone jack and a noise cancelling microphone right next to that. On the right hand side, you've got volume rocker here and then a single stage camera key. It does not have a dual stage key, so you can't press the camera key halfway down to focus, which is a little frustrating, but it just presses all the way down and will snap the picture. The bottom of the phone is pretty clean. There's nothing really there to mention or write home about, but there's a little port for the microphone, as you can see there. If we take a look at the back of the ATRIX 2, we've got a nice soft touch rubber cover on it, so it gives a nice grip in your hand. It really feels nice, quality made. Up top, we've got an 8-megapixel camera with autofocus and a flash. It can record 1080p HD video on this particular model, so it's an upgrade over the original ATRIX. And then we've got a speaker down at the bottom. Now, if we pry off the battery cover, which is pretty much the whole back of the phone, so you can see here, kind of wraps around and covers the whole back of the phone. We've got a 2GB micro SD card pre-installed on the phone, and it supports up to 32GB cards in capacity. The ATRIX also has about 4.5 GB of internal storage available to the user that you can use for app storage. And then here we've got this 1735 milliamp hour battery. 1785 milliamp hour battery. It's a little bit bigger, 1785 milliamp hours. Motorola says you get about 8.5 hours of talk time or almost 16 days of standby with it. So it's a pretty sizable battery there. Now in your hand, the ATRIX 2 feels quite well put together because of the way the back cover wraps around the front of the phone and underneath the chin here. It really feels put together well. There's no creaks or loose pieces that I can tell in holding or handling the device. And the soft touch rubber grip really gives it a nice hand feel, I guess you could say. It's fairly lightweight, but it's not terribly lightweight. It's about 148 grams, so it's not like you're holding a Samsung smartphone, but it's not as heavy as some of the other smartphones that are on the market right now. Now, the ATRIX 2 is powered by a dual-core 1GHz Ti OMAP processor, so instead of the NVIDIA Tegra 2 that was in the original ATRIX, this one's got a OMAP processor in it. It has 1GB of RAM, and it's fairly fast. This is running Android 2.3.5 with Motorola's custom interface that they no longer like to call monoblur, just Motorola's interface. It's very similar to the interface that we saw on the Droid Bionic or the Motorola Droid 3 for Verizon Wireless. It's got similar animations and such for the widgets here, so you can do some pretty cool things, and you've got this kind of parallax view when you're scrolling between home screens. You do have 5 home screens to choose from, and you of course can scroll through them. Motorola's preloaded some widgets here for social network updates, and there's an AT&T widget there to discover featured AT&T apps. And then we've got some standard applications, weather, and we added the contacts widget there. If we pull down the notification bar, you can see it's a pretty standard notification bar. However, like we saw on other Motorola devices, you do have the ability to selectively remove notifications as they come in, which is something that we always appreciate. If we pop open the application tray here, we can take a look at what apps come in pre-installed. So you've got a side-scrolling tray like we saw on other Motorola devices, and you can narrow that down to all apps, recently used apps, downloaded apps, or AT&T specific apps. So you can see what AT&T apps have come pre-installed. And like AT&T's been doing lately, you have the option to uninstall most of the pre-installed apps, which is pretty cool. So if you don't want, like, say, Let's Golf 2 or the Live TV app, you can uninstall that. Otherwise, we're looking at your pretty standard fare of applications from the carrier and from Motorola. We've got AT&T's Family Mapping, AT&T Code Scanner, Navigator. What else do we have here? My AT&T, Live TV from AT&T, Let's Golf 2 from AT&T. The Quick Office document editor is pre-installed there, and AT&T's Yellow Pages app is also pre-installed. Down here we also have the ZoomoCast application that we first saw on the Droid Bionic for Verizon Wireless, and that lets you access any of the files that is on your home computer or your work computer while on the phone. It's pretty cool and works pretty well. If we take a look at the email client here, we've got Motorola's standard email application that it's been using for quite some time now. Supports formatted text, so you got color text and bold and italics. You can pinch to zoom in on your message. And you can take a look at your message in a landscape format. Something that the Motorola email client does that others don't is support push email on IMAP accounts. So it supports the IMAP idle protocol. So you can get push email for most IMAP accounts, which is pretty cool. If we look at the text messaging application here, we've got a pretty standard text messaging application. Standard Motorola skin that we've seen before. Get a look at the on-screen keyboard here. And it's Motorola's typical Android keyboard, which usually works pretty well. It's pretty responsive and pretty fast here. Now, if you notice here, there's some of these icons have been customized for AT&T. So that text messaging icon is new, the email icon is new, the calendar icon is slightly different, and this new browser icon here, which opens up AT&T's browser. Let's pull up, while we're in the browser, we'll pull up our mobileburn site here. And here it's loaded our mobile web page. Let's take a look and see how it loads our full website. So it's pretty fast. It's still loading a little bit in the background. Doesn't really let us do much when it's still loading. It's a little laggy when it's still loading, but once it's fully loaded, it's fairly fast and smooth. You got double tap to zoom in on text. And you've got pinch to zoom as well. You can rotate, of course, the view in landscape mode. And since this is an Android 2.3 Gingerbread phone, it supports embedded flash video. I'm going to show you the HTC Radar 4G. So there you go. That played pretty quickly and easily. Just take a look and see how fast it'll load a story here. There you go, it's pretty responsive. Certainly gives a fast enough browsing experience for most customers. Now if we take a quick look at the camera here, we can launch the camera with our shutter key here. Hold that for a second and it will pop us into our camera. It's an 8 megapixel camera and it has Motorola's continuous autofocus mode, which can be kind of annoying and depends on your personal preference whether you like it or not. But it prevents you from being able to use the camera shutter key to autofocus the lens, as the lens will just refocus itself by itself. There we go, you can see it'll focus there, and then you can use the on-screen shutter key to snap the picture, or you can use the camera key up here. Let's see, it will refocus on my hand here, there we go. And then you can review your photos in the gallery there. It supports pinch to zoom. Didn't quite catch focus on my hand there. A little bit stuttery on the pinch to zoom, not quite as smooth as we've seen on other models. Double tap to zoom works as well. While you're in the camera, you can use the digital zoom here to zoom in on your subject. Opening up this tray opens up various camera options. You can set your flash and your brightness and your scene mode and other settings there. Hitting this button over here will switch to the front-facing VGA camera. If we switch over to the video mode here, we've got your 1080p video, and that supports Motorola's continuous autofocus as well. See, there we go. You can get it to refocus. You can tap the screen to attempt to focus the lens, but it doesn't always work all that well. So you can focus it off camera here. Hitting the red button will initiate your recording. You can zoom while recording, which is kind of unique for most cell phone cameras. And it will refocus while recording if it cooperates. Then you can review your footage immediately afterwards. But it doesn't seem to want to play back any audio that was captured. We're not in mute mode there, and a bit surprising that it doesn't want to play back any audio, so there seems to be a bug there with the video playback. And the ATRIX 2 is compatible with Motorola's new Lapdock 100, which is a new version of their lapdock, which debuted with the original ATRIX back earlier this year. This one's slightly different in that it's compatible with more than one device. Unlike the lapdock that was for the original ATRIX or the lapdock that was made specifically for the Droid Bionic, this will accept more than one Motorola device, so you can have different smartphones that work together with it. Now, it's a little bit smaller than the old one. The old one had an 11.6-inch screen. This one makes do with a 10.1-inch display. And the keypad is a bit different. Instead of the island keys that the other model had, you've got kind of a standard traditional keyboard, laptop keyboard here. The touchpad underneath is a bit smaller as well. You've got icons or grid lines delineating between the right and left click buttons. But there's also the ability to two-finger scroll, which is much more convenient and something that was sorely missed from the other earlier editions of the lapdock. Now, it still includes a 7-hour battery that can recharge the phone while you're using it. And on the back here, we've got a power port and 2 USB ports. And then this is the plug that plugs into the phone itself, which will then rest in this rubber cradle here, which isn't the most secure thing. If we grab our ATRIX 2 and plug it in, we can take a look. So let's plug our phone in, and then we slot the phone into this rubber nook, which kind of stays, kind of doesn't stay all the time. And then once that's in there, we've got our web top environment. So there we go, we've got our web top environment that allows us access to the phone's home screen here, and then you've got your different areas of the phone for accessing dialer, contacts, messaging, music, and such. And you can, of course, launch the Firefox web browser from here as well. Let's see if this will cooperate. In my experience, the web top has been pretty slow and not the easiest thing to use. So there you go, you've got the full Firefox web browser here. And if this will switch tabs for us, there we go. We can see the two-finger scrolling on the touchpad. There we go. So it's not the smoothest, certainly no replacement for a full laptop. You cannot pinch to zoom with the touchpad, just that does not work, but the two-finger scrolling does work, and we're glad to see that that was added. The keyboard itself is not bad to type on. It reminds me of an old laptop keyboard that is a little different than the island keys of the newer models, but it's very quick, easy to pick up typing pretty quickly on it without any trouble. So there you go, that's a quick look at the Motorola ATRIX 2 smartphone for AT&T. Just as a quick recap, we've got a 4.3-inch smartphone here that runs Android 2.3.5 with Motorola's custom interface on top. The 4.3-inch screen has a QHD resolution, so it's 540 by 960 pixels of resolution, and it does not use the pentile layout, so it's got a nice crisp, clear screen there. It's about 148 grams, roughly 10.5 millimeters thick, so it's not too bulky. Feels nice in the hand. The back of the phone has this nice soft touch rubber grip. Comes packed with an 8-megapixel autofocus camera with a flash. Can record 1080p video with that as well. And it's got a VGA front-facing camera for video chat. It's also compatible with Motorola's various web top accessories, thanks to the micro HDMI and micro USB ports down there. It's pretty fast. It runs a dual-core 1 GHz TI OMAP processor, and it's got about 1 GB of RAM to play with. You can pick this up now from AT&T for about $99.99 on contract. So there you go. That's a Motorola ATRIX 2 for AT&T. This is Dan Seifert from mobileburn.com.